M.G. Leonard on writing. This episode, editing. One of the things I learned once I'd signed a publishing deal was that there is a set process for your edit. Up until this point, editing for me had felt like being in a tumble dryer. I had endlessly gone round and round, over and over my manuscript, trying to improve everything until I was dizzy. When you are writing your first book and you get to the editing stage, all you think about is trying to edit your book into something that will appeal to an agent, that unknown champion who will win you your publishing deal. You want to give them something that they can sell, and you're trying to show your skill set, what type of writer you are. You want someone to represent you as much as your first book. You are editing in isolation, in a semi-paranoid, semi-desperate, utterly unobjective state of mind. Frankly, it's a miracle anyone ever gets picked up off the slush pile, but you have to remind yourself that they do. The industry needs debut authors. My advice is to try and leave yourself, your ego, your anxieties, your desires, outside your writing space and work to serve the story. Edit with the sole intention of making your story the most absorbing, dramatic, truthful piece it can be, and you can't go far wrong. When you edit with a publishing company, they understand and know the reader that your book is intended for, and they will get you to do a series of edits. The first level of the edit is a structural edit to make sure that your plot is as compelling and pacey as possible. This is where you will lose the flabby bits, the extraneous characters, unnecessary scenes, whole chapters even, and your book will tighten up. One of the things that came as a surprise was that I thought an editor would work with me to help edit the book, and that's what they do. But it comes in the form of non-prescriptive questions. The first time I got my manuscript back from my editor, I wanted to cry. Every page had at least one, if not 4 or 5 questions on it. And the manuscript was over 300 pages long. That's over 1,000 questions. And the questions would say things like, would Darcus really use these words? Perhaps something here about his father. This description is unclear. Could you improve it? Ultimately, this objective interrogation of your text is valuable and necessary. But you must be able to answer each of these questions and revise your words accordingly. The book is all your work, and that goes for the edits too. An editor is like an objective oracle who sets you on the right path, but ultimately this is your quest. Once everyone is happy with the structure of the book, you'll do a copy edit. And this is the detailed edit, line by line. You work through the prose and each character's dialogue, interrogating and improving as you go. This edit puts flesh on your character's bones, removes repetition, irons out continuity issues, makes sure the timescale is clear. And then, after you've completed the copy edit, then there is a proof. Now this is initially done by someone else, but then the manuscript is returned to you. And you have to go through each of the recommended changes and approve them. The proof looks at the tiny detail, the punctuation, the alliteration, repeated words, idiosyncrasies of the text, and makes sure that it conforms to the house style of the publishing company. In my proof edit, I made over 300 changes, which is one change on every page of the book, and sometimes those changes were tiny, but at other times they were a whole sentence. I would suggest that every book you write will go through at least 3 drafts, and more likely upwards of 4. Even if you're really streamlined, there's the first draft, which you hammer out and is destined to be imperfect. Then there's the second draft, which is effectively a rewrite of the first draft, just telling your story better. Then will come the structural edit, which will result in a third draft. And then the copy edit, which results in a fourth draft. And then, of course, there's the proof edit, should you choose to do it, which results in the finished manuscript. Beetle Boy, my first book, went through 5 drafts before it was picked up by a publishing company. At each stage, it was rejected by some wonderful agents who explained where I was going wrong. My favourite rejection was when someone kindly pointed out that my manuscript was 96,000 words and the appropriate length for a middle grade book was 50,000 words. I went back to my manuscript and performed a new edit, determined to learn. Once the book had been bought by Chicken House, I did 3 further edits. So you could say that there were 7 iterations of Beetle Boy before the finished manuscript went off to the printers. So here are my top tips for editing. Number 1. You must leave a healthy gap of time between your first and your second drafts. Number 2. Grammar matters. Do not send out a manuscript with sloppy grammar. It's a waste of everyone's time. Number 3. Adverbs are not your friends. Use them sparingly. The action and the dialogue should describe what's happening. Most of the time, plain old he said or she said is better than he yelped or she howled. 5. Always read your work aloud when you are editing. 6. If you write and edit on a computer, print it out and do a paper edit. 7. If you've been looking at the same font for several drafts, change the font of the whole document to shock your brain into seeing the text afresh. 8. Remove repetitions. Often, for emphasis or clarity, we all say the same thing in 3 different ways. Now, for a reader, that's boring. When you see you've done this, pick your favourite one, the cleanest, strongest, clearest one, and delete the other 2. Number 9. Eliminate anything that's going to slow down the story, dilute your characters' voices, or weaken the protagonist. 10. Unless your desired reader is an academic, try and use common language. Don't be clever. Is there a simpler, cleaner way to say what you've said? You don't want to stop a reader in their tracks because they don't understand the meaning of a particular word. 11. Check the desirable length of a story for the audience your book is aimed at. Recommended lengths are middle grade, 50 to 60,000 words. Young adult fiction, 60 to 70,000 words. Adult novels can be 70 to 120,000 words. But you have to be an exceptional debut writer to get a publishing company to take on anything much longer. My final word on editing is that to be a writer, you have to be an editor. You must learn to love editing. It's where the real work, the elbow grease, the knuckling down happens for an author. Anyone can make up a story, but not everyone can tell the story well. You have been listening to M.G. Leonard, author of Beetle Boy, available in all good bookshops from March 2016. Follow me on Twitter or go to my website, mgleonard.com. The wonderful music was by Sam Sparling. Thank you for listening and keep writing.